Welcome back, everyone, to the second and final part of the RPG game creation in Windows Forms for the Windows Form programming tutorial in C Sharp. And today, for the first section, we created the user interface, where we created the ability to view the game being occurred and be able to hit buttons to do the attacks. Now we're actually going to code everything and make the game work. A big portion of the code that we're using today is the code that we used in the console game tutorial series I made before this. So some things we're going to be moving a little fast through there. It's not going to be a deep dive into what exactly C# code does. If you want to see that, you then watch the tutorial before this. But this one's going to be using what we learned from the previous one to apply it to Windows Forms. So here we're going to add we're going to start off by adding a class called enemy. And this is going to be the same class that we had from our previous console game. So I'm going to copy and paste that from our previous console game that I created, which, as you can see, contains the health, the name, is the enemy dead, and then the constructors, and etc. So now we're going to create the boss character, which inherits from enemy. So again, I copy and pasted it from the previous project, and you can see boss inherits from enemy. So boss has everything that the enemy has, except he's big boss and he has a higher health. That's pretty much the difference between boss and enemy. And then now we're going to add the player. And the player here which is going to be the player which has our name, our current health, and everything that we can do with him. So to start, once we start the game, which is here, we're going to assign the player name, which got saved to this private string. We don't necessarily need to do that now because we're going to need to save our player object, which would probably be better to save. Because if you remember from our previous program with the game loop, we saved a player and we used that player to do everything that we needed in the game. So here we're going to change this to player, and we're just going to make it to playable. We're just going to call him player. And so now we're going to have a player. Oops. Player equals new player, with the association being player name for his name. So now we create the player, we instantiate the player class, and we assign the name to the player name. At this point, we're going to go to our start game function, and we're going to write out into the text field of you can see here in the lower right, the properties for the game log. We're going to start writing out the initial text. Write out the start game text to the text box. So this one you can see from what we've done before. We asked what was your name. We got your name. So now basically what we asked for the previous one, we wrote out the name. So here we're going to say text game log text, and we're going to add to it. Well, actually, we're going to set this one because it's the initial text. And then we're going to go to the next line. Thank you for entering your name, plus player name. Now, we're going to create our enemy crab that we're going to attack. So we want to know what's the current enemy that we're attacking. So we're going to create an enemy class here. And we're going to say this is our current enemy. And this is the current enemy that we're going to be fighting. So we're going to say set up the current enemy. And here our current enemy equals the giant enemy crab, which is what we had before. And keep in mind that while we're writing everything in the function here for start game, we're setting these all the private variables inside of the form class, because once this class ends, once this function ends, if we made, let's say, current enemy just in this function like we did before with the console game, that lived only until the console closed. But in this case, like once that function ended, the console will close. When this function ends, start game, it's going to go back to the screen and we can click on something. Basically, we stop running code waiting for a user input. So we have to be able to save the current enemy to be able to access him later, which is what we're doing here. Because we're not going to be running everything inside the start game function. We're only starting the game. So here we have entered your name. You've displayed everything on the screen. You set the text there. Now you're going to put the fact that we encountered the giant enemy crab. Write the text that we encountered. The text that we encountered the giant enemy crab. So when we write out the text to the text box, we want to do that a little differently for text boxes in Windows Forms. Windows Forms text boxes only read text as it, like the previous text that was added onto it. It doesn't keep necessarily in memory the previous text beforehand. So if you go to check the text each time, you're bringing a lot of things into memory. So in that case, if we have a text game log, we can append our text, which is append text to the current text of the text box. And by doing this, we are appending it without having to store that string in and apply onto it. So instead of building up a gigantic string, let's say 5,000 strings, and then adding something onto it and then releasing it from memory and then building up 5001, adding to it, then taking it from memory, we're just literally just taking the end of that buffer and just adding the single string. It's a lot faster and better, which is part of the text box class. So here we're going to say player the name, and then we're going to say you have encountered a, and it's going to be enemy.name, the current enemy.name, and this is how we had it before. So and then we're going to put this on a new line afterwards. So now we wrote down the first line here, then we appended the text, then we go on to the second line, and now we say what would you like to do? What would you like to do? All right. So now let's test this out and see how it displays. So we're going to run it. We're going to start the game. We're going to enter our name. And we have here, thank you for entering your name, David. David, you have encountered a giant enemy crab, and what would you like to do? So as you can see, it has not done a line break. So /n must not be how we do that for WinForms, so we're going to change that. So in order to do a new line inside of a text box inside of Windows Forms, you would have to use environment.newline. Now environment.newline is just a shortcut for adding the new line characters needed for the text box, but it is technically a combination of escape sequences here. I don't particularly remember them, but so if you get rid of the end new line, which is for text, and we can add environment.newline to it, and then here we're going to add the same thing by ending the string, adding new line, and then beginning our text. So now we should have it so when you start the game, it says, thank you for entering your name, D. D, you have encountered a giant enemy crab. What would you like to do? Which is good. So we're going to stop that. All right, at this point, we need to create what we want to do with the buttons. So we're going to head over back to the form ones, and we're going to double click on one of those buttons to create a function. So here we have private attack button clicked. We have the sender and the event args. So what I'm going to do here is now write a function to encompass everything inside the game loop that we did before, where we actually take in the attack, determine what we're going to do, we're going to apply it for the player and the enemy, and determine what happens next. And then each one of the buttons is going to call into that game loop with and apply all the game stuff. So here I'm going to create a private void function called perform action, where we're going to perform an action which is with the button that you click. So first we're going to take a string of the action you want to take, And this string action is going to be similar to what we did before in the console game, where if you hit 1, you would type in the letter 1, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4. Except this time it's hard-coded in the back end. You don't necessarily need to know it as the player. You're not typing it in, you're hitting a button instead. So now we can attach here on the button click, we're going to say perform action, and we're going to pass in a 1. So now, we're going to say perform the action. So now we're performing action 1, and then we're good. So we're going to go back here to multi-attack, which in our previous code was a 2. So we're going to perform the action for 2. And then back here for guard, guard was 3. And then last one, heal, was 4. So as you can see, we have all the buttons set up to perform the action. So they're all going to go to this singular function here, shared, and now all the code is going to happen here. So as we did it before we had it in a while loop while the player's not dead, but this time we're going to check. We're going to rewrite that kind of similarly, but a little different in the fact that we're just going to have here that we're just going to go through one iteration, performing the action, and then we're going to check what happened. So here we're going to first switch off the player's action. So first we're going to switch off the player's action that was provided to us. So here we're taking check what action the player took, and then we have action. So here for case 1, we're going to write out the text saying that we chose to attack the enemy crab. Write out the attack text. And this is, as we mentioned before, we do this in the game log. We're going to append the text, and I copied this from the other program. And this is, instead of being enemy, it's going to be current enemy.name. So you chose to attack the giant enemy crab. And then, as we've mentioned before, we kind of have to just remember to put in environment.newline because we want this to go on a new line. So we write out we did the attack, and then we're actually going to have the current enemy get hit. And this time he's going to have to get hit with a random number between this and the player's max attack power. So attack the enemy. So here we don't have a random or the max player attack power, so I have to actually define that up here. So here I'm going to define a private random we'll call it, and that needs to be initialized at some point. So we're going to create that inside of our start game. When we're creating our initial controls, we're going to say init the random class. So random equals new random, and then now this will work. And then we're also going to give ourselves some constants. So I'm going to say private constant int max player attack power, and this is going to be, let's see what I had it before. We're gonna make this max attack power 10. So we're gonna have to come back and add additional attack powers there, but we're gonna handle it when we come back up to it. So here the enemies gets hit. So we're going to have this be the random next hit, which is going to be between 1 and so the minimum value is 1 and the maximum value is going to be the max player attack power. So now we attack the enemy. So we chose to attack, the enemy gets hit, and we continue on. So moving on to a very similar case, we're going to copy and paste this to do for case 2, which is the multi-attack. Right at the attack test, you chose to multi-attack the blah. So now this, I'm going to copy and paste from the previous code again. This is where I taught you guys how to do a for loop. So we loop 3 times to perform a multi-attack and apply the attack animation to the enemy, which in this current program, we're calling the enemy currently enemy. And he gets hit for his max player attack power, and then we check if the enemy is dead, then we just leave the loop so we don't keep writing things out. Or we don't keep beating the dead enemy, because before, when he got hit, he just kept getting hit, and then you'd be like, oh, he got hurt. So we're going to have an issue with this get hit function in a little bit, but we're going to come back to that. So copying case 1 again for case 3, we're going to come here, put case 3, we're going to write out the defend text, and you chose to defend. And we're going to go on a new line. And then here, we're going to say that the player is guarding. Paste. Okay, and then the last one is heal, which is here. I'm going to say write out the heal text. You chose to heal, and here we're going to heal the player a random amount between 1 and 15. Okay. So now, just to see how this happens and how everything's connected to this point, we technically can hurt the enemy and heal the player. So we'll start the game. My name is David. So, what would you like to do? I want to attack. It says you chose to single attack the giant enemy crab. You chose to multi-attack the giant enemy crab. Guard, you chose to defend. You chose to heal. I can hit these, and I'm doing all the attacks. I can scroll up and see my history here, and it all displays. But you can see here, I forgot to put an environment end line at the end of what would you like to do, which made it not go to the next line. So I put that back there. So that will fix that little part. Now, what we're going to do here is after we have attacked the enemy, we're going to check if the enemy is dead. So we're going to say, check if the enemy is dead. So if the current enemy is not dead, then the enemy can attack the player. So we can have the enemy attack the player and show it via text. So text game log append text. We're going to append the text here. I'm going to copy this from our previous program that I mentioned, and then we're going to go over it. We're going to put a new line at the end of it. So it says the enemy attacked the player, and the player has blank health left. So here's our max attack power for the enemy. So here, max attack power for the enemy is something that an enemy probably should determine. Before I determined it via the function, but this time I'm going to change the enemy class just to give the attack power to the enemy here. So here I'm going to create another property. I'm going to have it in. I'm going to say max attack power. And this is going to be determines the max attack power this enemy can have. So by default, we're going to say set the default max attack power. At this point, we're going to say the max attack power is going to be 10 for normal enemies, but for the boss, we're going to set that to be 50 because he's the big boss. So here we're going to have this be the current enemy that max attack power. So that's determined by the current enemy that I'm on, because eventually current enemy is going to change into big boss, but right now it's giant enemy crab. So right now it's 10. It's going to eventually be 50. So now at this point, we're going to do things a little different. At this point in the game loop, we ended up going through the while loop. We ended up coming back to the top, and we checked, hey, is the player or the enemy dead? So we've already checked, is the enemy not dead? We're going to check if either one of them is dead now. So check if either the enemy or player is dead. So here I'm going to say, hey, is the player is dead, or current enemy is dead. Then we know that we're going to have to start showing something else. So here we want to get into this if loop if either one of these things happen. And now we're in here. Actually, I'm going to write this a little different because otherwise I have to rewrite another if statement. So I'm going to check if the player is dead, because then we want to show the game over message. Else if the current enemy is dead, then we're going to load up the next enemy into the current enemy. So we'll start with the is dead by first making another function called game over. So what game over is going to do is it's going to write out that the game ended and hide the controls. So here we're going to now write out the append text here, and we're going to say you have died. Actually, let me check what I did for game over here. Game over. That's what I wrote last time. Now we're going to hide the controls, the player controls, and show the start game. Okay, so here we're going to say button start game dot is visible. Oops, visible, I meant, equals true. So we're going to show start game again, and then as you can see from what we did before here, instead of hiding each individual button, I'm going to handle the table container, and we're going to set this one to false. So we're hiding our controls, we're showing the start game button, and at this point let's say the controls are gonna disappear, which is right here. These controls will disappear. The start game will appear again, and then unlike last time, I'm gonna leave this here so you can see the text. So when you start a game, you hit start game again, you fill out your name, and you go to do this all over again, you're gonna have an issue where the text from the previous game is here. I'm gonna erase that, and the way to erase that is that when you start the game, you just make sure the text is erased. Actually, I'm already doing that here. By replacing the text here with this, I believe that's happening. Okay, so technically we're good. Because we didn't append text here, we're saying text, we're replacing the text with everything with this text, and then we've been appending the text the whole entire time. So actually we're doing pretty well. We got game over pretty successfully. So if the player dies, set that this is game over. Game over. Whoop. Game over. So otherwise, I'm just saying, me personally, I like to have the negative case on the bottom of the if loop. So I'm just going to put that there because I like the smaller stuff at the bottom, because this one's going to be bigger. So here, all I did there was I just swapped them. So I'm going to check if the current enemy is dead. No. Else, if the player is dead, then game's over. Otherwise, you didn't hit either one of these. It's going to end. Nothing happened. It's because you guys are still fighting. You're still alive. He's still alive. You can attack him. He can attack you. We're good. So we have here, check if either the enemy or player is dead. And yeah. So at this point, I want to, if the current enemy is dead, I want to check and see if the enemy was the boss. So check if the enemy was the boss. So in this particular case, I'm tracking it because I know I'm doing this in this particular way because I know I only have two enemies and one of them is a boss and one's an enemy. You probably would want to write this a little differently if you were doing something with more enemies, etc. Where you would check off a name or see which one you killed, or which loop through all your enemies, see which one's health is 0, etc. You can do it a bunch of ways. But in this case, I'm going to teach you guys a new command, which is called is. And is allows you to check if an object is of a type of class. So I'm going to say, is the current enemy, is it a boss class? So if the current enemy is a boss class, then I know in this case, because I only have one boss and one enemy, that this was Big Boss. Else, this was not Big Boss. So the enemy was a boss, and he is now currently dead, because if the enemy is dead and the enemy was a boss, then you won the game. So at this point, we would write, I guess we'd say game over. It'd kind of do the same thing, except it's not bad. Okay, so in that case, for game over, we're going to put here a string of game over text, and then that's the string that we want to put in. So here we put the game over text, and to set this as a game over, we put that in here, and then here, if the enemy is a boss, you won the game. So here we're going to say game over, except this is a positive text, and we're going to say, so from what I wrote from the last console game, this is what I wrote, where I said, congratulations, player name, you defeated all the enemies in Save the Kingdom. Sadly, the princess is in another castle. So that's what we're going to output to the screen, and you won the game, and you'll be able to reset it and start a new game. So the check if the enemy was the boss. So now if the enemy wasn't the boss, the enemy was destroyed, set up Big Boss. So now we're going to set our current enemy equal to a new boss. So now we're setting the current enemy to Big Boss, and we're going to have to write out that you have encountered this enemy now, which is going to be the same similar way that we wrote it up before. So here we set up the current enemy, and then here I wrote out the text that you encountered Big Boss. So we're going to say that you encountered Big Boss. And I'm going to say player name you've encountered Big Boss. What would you like to do? Okay. So technically this game should be 100% done. There's just some issues with it, which you'll see when you go to play the game, that we have to change. So now we're going to run it and play through a single test run, and I'll kind of show you the problems that I can see with this game. So I'm going to hit start. It wants me to enter my name. My name is David. I'm going to go. So it says, thank you for entering your name. You have encountered giant enemy Clab. What would you like to do? I would like to attack. It says you chose to attack the single enemy Clab. The enemy attacked the player, and the player has 96 health remaining. So I attacked the giant enemy crab, and he attacked me back for 96. Then I'm going to multi-hit him. I multi-hitted him 3 times. He attacked me back. I have 94. I'm going to guard. So I have 94 health, because remember, I can't get hurt while guarding. And I'm going to heal myself. So I chose to heal, and he must have hit me hard, because now I have 91 health. Now I have 92. Now I have 96. So I'm healing myself. So what you'll notice is that we don't have the text where it says that I attacked the enemy and what damage I did to him, how much health he has remaining. So that is because I put the enemy text inside the player class. So in the previous one, I said like he guarded the blow and was unharmed, was hit for blank damage. The player got hit. And this is all into the console. So since it's written out inside these player classes to the console line before, it's not coming back out to the text label box. So we're going to need a way to write that out. So now basically the last part we have to handle here is getting the text to appear back on the screen for the player being attacked and attacking the enemy. And we're going to handle this by removing the attack text from the player and the enemy classes. Back in the day, and like in the previous tutorial, the console, we were kind of handling everything by the main console thing. But in this particular program, the way that WinForms is written, the boss and the player shouldn't be writing out the text of what they did. We knew what they did because of what you selected before. You chose attack. I know you attacked. I'm not going to, at that point, make it so the player has to keep track of what you're doing and write it out. He just has to apply damage, and that's all he's responsible for. So the first to handle that, we're going to go and we're going to just look through the player class. So the player class here gets hit. So when the player gets hit, if he was guarding, then he guarded the blow, and we remove the guarding. But that's handled themselves. So I'm going to delete this here because we're removing it from the player class. I'm going to go back to form 1. So when the player is gets attacked, which is here, first we're going to say check if the player was guarding, and if the player is guarding, then we write out this, which is going to be the player name now. Oops, player.name. Write out that the player was guarding. And then we're going to reset that. So actually this whole entire case can go away. Because we're just saying if you got hit. And then here we're going to say that the player that is guarding equals false because you're not guarding anymore. Reset the guarding. So at this point, if the player is not guarding, then he gets attacked, and this is our normal attack text where we're saying the player got hit. Now because we're not keeping track now on the player side, once he dies, if he's writing out stuff here, we have to actually say if the player died outside of this. So here, after the current enemy is not dead, if he attacks the player, we're going to have to say if the current enemy is not dead, then we're going to see check if the player has died. So here we say if player is dead. Actually, I don't need to say that there because I already handled it. Never mind. Erase that part. Because here I say if the player is dead, because which I would have died in the die function here. So I'll say this part is the part that's going to get written out. Has died. It's going to say die. It's going to say is dead. And then over here, when it says player is dead, yes, then it says you have died. So I handled that. So now we're going to write the heal text. So if you chose to heal, the player will heal. And then I will write out the heal text. And here we're going to say you append the text inside here. And then this is player.name has healed the amount to heal. And you now have blank health remaining. So health, we already know is the player.health, and the amount to heal, we're going to have to return that from this. So we're going to say amount to heal. Oh wait, I think we already have that here, which is we're gonna save this here. We're going to say set the amount to heal. So int amount to heal equals book, and then this is amount to heal, and then that's set up. So as you can see, it's so far the way that you're coding this is relatively the same. You're just kind of moving things around depending on the style. Like before, it was just a console, and you can kind of just have anything doing because it was just text based. But since this is actually having different asynchronous nature, and by asynchronous, instead of synchronous nature, which was the console, that was synchronous in the fact that single thing you did relied on the thing before it, and it never like waited. This code waits in the fact that it's asynchronous, as it comes here and then it just waits, and it can just be an indefinite amount of time until you take action, being clicking one of those buttons, and then it runs a little bit of code and then it waits, and then you do something because it's displaying the form and you have the ability to interact with it, and there's periods of time where the code is not doing anything and it's just waiting. So that's why we kind of have to move some things around, but it's relatively the same code. So we have the heal text now, so that we handled all the player things. As you can see, there's no more strings in here. So just looking at the enemy, the last thing we need to write is that the enemy was hit and the enemy has died. I think I wrote the enemy has died already. No, I don't really say it. So if the enemy has died, then we'll just write out the enemy has died. So here we're going to say append text. So the current enemy name has died, and then environment.newline. So cool. So we handled that one. The enemy has died. Text, and here we're going to say that player name was hit for hit value and now has blank health remaining for the enemy. So when the enemy gets hit, we're going to write that out. So we're going to write that out for here. Write out the enemy got hit text. So text game log that append text. And here we're going to have player.name was hit for the hit value, and then we're going to have the it's not player. Sorry, my bad. It's the current enemy we're talking about. It's got hit because this is the enemy got hit, and then we're going to do the same thing with the hit value, where we get say hit value, set the hit value, and then this is hit value equals 1. So I can use it both here and here. And then this is going to then add environment.newline. And then we're going to move that over here to the multi-hit attack after you get hit. And we also going to set the hit value. Hit value. And I already defined hit value, so I'm gonna have to just create a blank hit value at the start of this. Create an initial hit value variable. Int hit value equals 0. And also I just noticed that for player.isGuarding, I missed an environment new line. So if I put this here, that will be what I need to do to put that on a new line. Okay, at this point I believe everything is connected. So let's play the game and see how it goes. And see if it works the same way as the console game, where it writes out everything to the screen and we can handle clicking the buttons to do things. So here we have the RPG game, Windows Forms. I'm going to start the game. I'm going to enter my name. I was about to type in start name, David. So thank you for entering name, David. What would you like to do? Well, first I want to attack the enemy. So the giant enemy crab was hit for 2 damage. He now has 98 remaining, and I was hit, and I have 97%. So I'm going to attack 3 times. The enemy crab is hit for 5, 4, and 2. He now has 93 health remaining. So I'm going to attack again. I don't seem to be hitting too hard, but I think my max attack damage. Oh look, my name online, Solid Snake 4444. I did a multi-hit, and I attacked for 4 damage, 4 damage, and 4 damage, and he now has 44 health remaining. That 44, 44, 44. Next, I'm going to try guarding. So you chose to defend. David guarded the blow and was unharmed. So I'm going to do that a couple times. I'm going to heal, and I should have. You have healed 8 health. You have now have 87 health remaining. The enemy attacked the player, and the player has 79 health remaining. So I healed myself 8 health, which after here, yeah, it does end up being correct. And then he attacked me, and I lost 1 health. You can see here, David has healed 8 health, and then it stopped. I must have missed. Yeah, right here, I missed an environment new line. So this line didn't go yet. So we can attack. I'm going to heal a little bit. I only healed 1 health. I'm healing pretty shit amounts. I'm going to multi-hit. He has 19 health remaining. He has 1 health remaining. So I'm going to try to heal up. I'm just going to spam heal. Okay. So now I'm going to attack. And he is dead. So I've encountered a big boss. So I'm going to multi-hit attack. He has 139. I have 60 health. Damn. 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 I don't even think I made Big Boss this strong in the console game. Let me check here. No, I made him that strong. Max player attack power? Why was I able to beat him in the other game? But hey, this is Demon Souls in wind forms, right? So you do all those attacks, it's extremely hard, Demon Souls style, and yep, I'm dead. David has healed, so yeah, you have died. Game over. So you can start the game over. You know, you come up with a name. I'm not even getting below 100. Damn. All right, so how about this? How about? I mean, at this point, this is over. I'm just playing around with numbers, you know, for game balancing. But I could probably lower his health down to 100 because he still has attack max power. And let's make that 30, so he's a little bit weaker. You actually, you know, typical game design, you probably wouldn't want to nerf 2 things at once. So we can probably leave him at 150 health and nerf his attack power. Let's say the 25, because the enemy was the giant enemy crab was 10. So by making the boss have the attack power of 25, he'll still be more powerful than them, and he still has a lot of health, so he can dish out more damage and take more, but he won't be so overwhelmingly bad that you can't over heal him. And then we're going to change the heal amount, the max heal amount, here to a random instead of to 15. We're going to make this, let's make this 30. So you can heal randomly 1 between 30. So you have a chance, because before he was just... So we have a chance that if you get completely lucky, you can heal through an attack that he does and go positive. So this will probably be more fair. I still think I'll be hard. It'll be hard to kill him, but I think it will be more fair. Like, look, I'm healing bigger now, and I'm getting hurt a decent amount too. So I have 57 health, and I only attacked him for 2. So now I have 81 health, and he has... Yeah, so see, now I have to do a combination of between healing and fighting. So here, if I actually like play it smart, I might have the chance to actually beat him here. So I gotta heal. Yeah, there we go. Big Boss has died. Congratulations, David. You defeated all the enemies and saved the kingdom. So I don't know, maybe I made it a little bit too easy. So, but hey, at least I won this time. I had to do a mix of healing and attacking. I know for my console game, I made it a point to kind of show like different attacks and stuff. But in all honesty, attack and guard is like completely useless. Why wouldn't you multi-attack, and why guard and take a blow without doing anything when you could heal? So technically, as a game, 50% of your options are useless, or not. It's not useless. They work. It's just, why would you use them? but as a programming exercise, we'll just say it was good. You need damage over time and some debuffs. Ooh, so maybe that would be a better thing. In which case, we could just say like, oh, it did attack someone with damage over time, instead of bullying the true, and then every single game loop you just apply whatever damage you did. Let's say attack damage, and then you apply the damage over time. So it's like, oh, if you're gonna get hurt 5 times every attack cycle, it's like, yeah, I attacked you for 16, now plus the 5 because you're on fire or something like that. And then maybe you can say like, oh, if you're on fire, 3 iterations of the attack cycle, you after 3 iterations, you're not on fire anymore. So you can do something like that. So thank you all for watching. That is how to make our RPG game that we made for the console inside Windows Forms. So what we learned was how to put together a Windows Form application, basic Windows Form application, taking in text boxes, buttons, and putting them together on the screen, having them resize when you resize the window, and then hooking that all up to the code in the back end to make the game work. We also made it so you can load up a new modal screen to accept inputs from separate windows. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to leave down a message in the comments on more tutorials you would like to see. And if you enjoyed this video tutorial, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.